You ever play a game the day it comes out for like 6 to 8 hours and then just never touch the game again for like a long time? I'm not talking about an indie you can beat in 4 to 10 hours. I'm talking a big game like, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, or New World. Because that is honestly what happened to me with New World. 3 years ago when it released originally, I picked the game up looking for a new MMO to play. I played it for about 8 hours and then just stopped. Do I exactly remember why I stopped? Not really, but my best guess would have been either because the game didn't feel great to play at the time, like it was kind of sluggish and lazy, or not lazy, laggy, or it might have been because the game crashed, and when I went to log back in, I was stuck in a giant queue to be able to play again. I don't know exactly why I stopped, but I can estimate it was one of those reasons. But now with some people that I know deciding to pick it up, I decided to hop in also and see how the game has changed in 3 years. And these are just like my thoughts and opinions on New World Aeternum? Yeah, it's Aeternum. If you have your own, drop them in the comments below. And I've been having a lot of fun with New World, especially the game's combat. I think it's the simplicity and the feel of the combat that make New World Aeternum so fun. Unlike other MMOs like WoW or Final Fantasy 14, New World is very action-oriented. I haven't played a lot of Final Fantasy 14. I played a little bit, but not like, too much. WoW, I played that shit for 10 years. From Burning Crusade through the Battle of Azeroth. But it's been a bit since I've touched that game also. And I've delved a little bit into like Guild Wars 2, but not like heavy enough to, pull anything from it. But I think now I'm gonna do a good amount of New World, because I do like that it's very action oriented. Dodging and blocking attacks and then counterattacking with your limited abilities and attack chains makes the game a lot of fun. Or just spamming attacks and abilities to kill things as quickly as possible is kind of fun too, when you don't want to play, strategically. And the combat just feels really good to play now. Like a lot better than what it was at the beginning from what I remember. Feels like it's been tightened up and that it has a pretty good flow to it. And I think its simplicity plays into that flow. Since you're locked down to 3 abilities plus your basic and heavy attacks, dodge and block buttons at a time, because technically you can go and switch weapons in the middle of combat, but you still only have, 3 abilities for that weapon. You don't have a lot of buttons to use. You got those 7 abilities and then 4 more for quick use items that you can equip. So, altogether, you got 11 abilities, or 11 buttons that you can hit. But only 7 of them are really combat ability. And it's with having so few buttons you have to hit during combat that makes it very simplistic, but it really increases the flow of the combat. Because you have a lot more mobility and low cooldowns on most abilities that are complemented by those basic combat actions, you're always doing something and not waiting around for cooldowns. And that's kind of why I think New World Aeternum's combat has a really good flow to it. It's not the best flow in a game, in like an action-oriented third-person game like that, but it's still really good, I think. And while the combat is a heavy focus in the game, there's also like a pretty heavy focus on profession grinding in there. And yeah, that is a staple of like MMOs, but this one feels really expansive because you have a bunch of different professions that you can level up, and you're not stuck with, like WoW, you can choose 2 major professions. This one you can do all of them if you want. And with them each having a max level of 250, there is a lot of grind or a lot of gold that's needed to level them up. And the thing is that it doesn't feel like a bad grind to me. Yes, there's a lot of it, and I've barely scratched the surface of this grind. But that isn't really a bad thing, because it feels like you can level up decently fast with it, Like, the reason that I really like the profession stuff is mostly because they build on each other a lot more than I think a lot of other games do with their professions. Where, like, okay, if you take WoW, for example, you have some overlap between the different professions, but since you can only choose two, like, if you're gonna do a hunter, you're probably gonna do leatherworking and skinning. So you can get the skins and use it for your leatherworking armor, or use it for, like, you're making the studded armor upgrades or whatever. But when it comes to New World, all of the professions kind of like, they kind of stack on each other a lot better. For example, you kill animals, you skin them to get their hide, and that will level up your skinning. Then you go to the leatherworking station, turn that raw hide into leather, which will level up your leatherworking. Then using armor smithing or tailoring, you can turn that leather into armor. I don't know if it works with tailoring, but it is part of leatherworking, or part of armor smithing. But also, to make armor, you need stuff from leatherworking and smelting and, like, all these other ones, like all these professions together to kind of gel and make the specific stuff that you want. And it's not just like a singular progression of skinning, leatherworking, armor smithing. It's, you have to do skinning, mining, leatherworking, smelting, and then do armor smithing. Like, I like that it all kind of builds on each other and it builds together. Like, for me, the grind just doesn't feel as bad as, like, some other games, and I do kind of like its grind. So I should have prefaced this earlier in the video, but I feel like I'm not super far into the game yet. I'm level 25, and recently I completed the first area story. I've leveled up a few times since completing it, but yeah, it hasn't been a super long time since I finished the first area story. And I thought the first area had a decent storyline. Not exceptional, but I think it sets the tone for the game's story, and I do think it does a decent job leading into the next area. But I don't really feel like story is New World Aeternum's, like, strongest feature. Like, I don't think it's their strong suit. I think it's the gameplay and the grind that are more of what they're really good at, personally. But since it's an MMO, there are probably a lot of systems I haven't experienced yet in New World Aeternum. So you could call this video a very early impression of New World Aeternum after 3 years. I honestly think I've put maybe 10 hours in so far, but from this very early impression, I think that New World Aeternum lands a little bit above the center of my I like it category. I think for me it lands like just a little bit above Animal Well. And that's mostly because I don't have any strong feelings towards or against New World Aeternum so far. The game's combat is fun. It has a lot of grind to it with its professions, but it doesn't feel that bad, and it's nice that they do actually build into each other. And the first area story is decent. If there's one thing I don't care for in the game, it's the weight inventory system, but that hasn't really creeped up that much, unlike something like, you know, Stalker 2, because your weight is like so high up there that you can grab a bunch of stuff before going back to town and either selling it or turning it all into materials for profession stuff. But that's about it for my dislikes of New World Aeternum currently. I might make a follow-up video later when I do get farther in, but for now, those are my thoughts on New World Aeternum. If you enjoyed the video, please do all the algorithm stuff, but most importantly, I hope you have a royal day or night, and I will talk to you later.